And there we go. Well, again, welcome everyone to the VCIF office hours. My name is Ben Weinstein. I'm the Senior Project Management Specialist with OCJP, overseeing the VCIF grant. We also have some members of our team here today. I will let Jackie, why don't you start and introduce yourself?
Hi there, I am Jackie Nodell, and I am one of the project management specialists. I've worked with some of you, but good morning. Thanks for coming this morning.
Kate, you want to go ahead?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Caitlin Kotras. I also go by Kate, and I am also a project management specialist with the VCIF team.
And we have also Amy Curley, who's a senior project management specialist, and Erin Morris on the call, as well as Kimberly Casillas. So if you've worked with VCIF, you've probably worked with one of us. And Jackie and Kate are going to be also helping out with the presentation today. As you can hear, I'm a little under the weather, and so hopefully you don't have to hear too much of my hoarse voice today. So let's go ahead and get started. The agenda today is we're going to go over some reminders about the VCIF grant. We're going to talk a bit about amendments, and that is the bulk of what we're going to be doing today. Then we're going to do some reminders and some instruction on invoicing. And then we'll go over some of the free trainings that are available that have been added to the roster from the University of Tennessee Law Enforcement Innovation Center. And of course, we'll have time for questions throughout. So really quick, just a reminder that our office communicates with these three individuals who are listed on the screen in front of you: the authorized official, project director, and the financial director. Anything related to this grant is going to be communicated to these folks via the email that you have provided to us. So if your email changes, if anybody in any of these positions changes, we do need to be notified as soon as possible and within 10 days of that change occurring. So please do reach out to us if you are new to this grant, or if someone that you know you've worked with recently has since left, and let us know and make sure that we have the right person that we're emailing. We keep these records by hand. It's a little bit antiquated, but that's the way that we update our system. This is also how you'll be communicated with from the Office of Business and Finance, and so it's really important that you keep this information updated by emailing your project management specialist with any changes. This QR code, if you hold up your phone to it, you can go to the page in our grants manual that describes these roles. And so if you're unsure who this should be, it should be someone who has access to their email, who is frequently checking their email, and who is going to be intimately involved with the grant in some way. It does not have to be the person in charge of your department or the sheriff's office. It does not need to be the person who is running the day-to-day grant as well. You know, these responsibilities can be delegated. So just make sure it's someone who is be able to be communicated with easily. Want to also issue a reminder about the civil rights compliance portion of our grant. All project directors are responsible for completing the civil rights compliance training. Ideally, it should be within 3 months or 90 days of the start date of the grant. For some of you, we're past that at this point. So if you can please make sure that you follow this instruction as soon as possible. You can find it in our grants manual, and Kate has dropped the link to that chapter of the grants manual in the chat. But it is the responsibility every fiscal year to complete this compliance training and quiz and to keep those records in your grant file. As well, the civil rights compliance officer in your office should also be completing this training. Okay. For the VCIF grant, we did have a required orientation meeting that we held several of these back in the fall. So if you attended any of those in person, you have completed this requirement. If you have watched this video that's posted on our FundSource chapter, it was recorded in August, and so the slides and the recording of that video are posted on our FundSource chapter. If you watched that video, you are good with this requirement. If you haven't done either of those things, it is imperative that you watch that video that's posted on our FundSource chapter. This link is here to that, and I think someone is putting that in the chat as well. And we'll email out these slides to you as well. Once you watch that video, or if you attended the training and you haven't checked in a while and you're not sure if you got marked for completion, email info@.ocjp@tn.gov and let us know that you were there. Most likely we've marked you as present, but if you want to check, that's always fine. And you can also, we've had a lot of people do this in these office hours videos, office hours meetings. If you're not sure, just ask in the chat and someone can look it up really quick while we're in here. But if you can, I'd ask you maybe to save this to the end once we're done with the recording. Okay, so those are some quick reminders about grants management, project management. Any questions on any of that? Anything to add from folks on the VCIF team that you think I missed or just want to remind folks? Okay. If any questions arise, please feel free to put them in the chat. But let's move on to some reminders about the actual mechanics of implementing your project. So purchasing equipment, most of you have equipment in your grants. Most of you have only equipment in your grants, and so this really applies to you. Just some reminders about how to do this. First of all, this isn't on the slide, but I just want to remind folks that if you have not started the process of ordering equipment that's in your FY24 budget, you need to get on that as soon as possible. The time to do that was the months leading up to today. So if you haven't done it yet, please do not wait any longer. Prioritize that this week, and please reach out to your project management specialist if you haven't communicated with them or done so yet, to let us know if there have been any issues with you starting this process. We understand sometimes larger pieces of equipment require a bidding process, and so that might get hung up in approvals. If you haven't actually completed the purchase yet, we completely understand that. I'm not talking about actually paying the money or receiving the equipment. We understand that there are delays. I'm talking about actually placing the order, issuing the purchase order, making sure that these equipment items get purchased before the end of the fiscal year. You are now running out of time. We have about 4 months left in the fiscal year, and so it's very, very important that you prioritize ordering this equipment. Now, to do so, most importantly, you have to follow your agency's procurement policies. The VCIF grant with OCJP does not supersede you all following the policies that you have to follow to order any equipment with any money. Also important is that you follow Tennessee and federal law regarding certain types of equipment, such as drones. There is a approved list of drones that you can purchase, and then there are some drones that are not legal to purchase or use in the country. So make sure that you're following those laws. VCIF has very stringent requirements on certain types of equipment. Those are listed here, and they include license plate readers or LPRs and radios. So radios must be P25 compatible, and LPRs must be purchased off the statewide contract. And there is a Tennessee Department of Transit, TDOT process that you have to follow. It's on our website. It's on their website. If you have questions about finding that, please reach out to your project management specialist. If you're purchasing LPRs, please also note that a memo was sent out on January 26th that lays out very clear instructions on how to do this, when to pay for the LPRs, and when you should invoice for that purchase. So we are really trying to standardize that process. So if you have questions about that, please reach out to us and please review that memo. This is something we've seen in a few instances, especially if agencies have equipment that has a software or subscription for maybe data storage or something like that that goes with the purchase of the equipment. You cannot use VCIF funds for any expenses that go beyond the end of 2025. So VCIF funding goes through fiscal year 2025, which ends on June 30th. But we recognize, obviously, expenses that happen in that fiscal year, they might last 12 months, right? And so we are willing to pay for any subscription, data storage, any kind of fees through the end of through the end of calendar year 2025. So if you have a contract with a vendor that goes through 2026, you either have to prorate that when you bill the state and only bill the state for the months leading up to the end of 2025, or you'll have to renegotiate that contract. So we cannot pay for any items, any expenses or fees past December 2025. And then lastly, please refer to your VCIF equipment certifications. These were signed during the contracting process. You can also find them on our website. And so these also lay out a lot of what I've said already, but just govern how equipment should be purchased, used, and then disposed of. Specifically related to vehicles, we just talked about this in our last office hours, but I want to remind folks, all vehicles purchased with VCIF funds must be marked with your agency's standard branding, unless you have language in your scope, in your contract, that is explicitly describing that these vehicles will be used in a covert or undercover purpose. That's the only exception to this rule. And again, that should be in your contract. So this is not an ambiguous thing like, well, we want to use it this way, or we think we can use it this way part of the time. This has to be an exclusive use, exclusive covert or undercover use. Otherwise, they have to be marked. If you are purchasing vehicles and you are, place the order, but the delivery timeline is backed up and you don't think you're going to get it this fiscal year, that's something we're seeing a lot. Please reach out to your project management specialist. Again, we went over this in our previous office hours meeting, so I would refer you to our website, which has a recording of that meeting, and you can get a lot more information on this topic, so I don't want to go over it again. But there are ways to make sure that you can start the process of ordering your vehicle. And if you don't think you're going to get this fiscal year, we can help you move that money to fiscal year 25, or when you'll actually receive the equipment. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. So far, any questions related to this? This has basically all been review. So appreciate you guys sticking through that and listening to me. But if anything comes up for you as we move along, please put your question in the chat, or please raise your hand so that we can get that question answered. So for now, I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to Jackie and Kate for the next section on amendments. So Jackie, the floor is yours.
All right, so I am Jackie, and we are going to talk about amendment requests. And the deadline is coming up really quickly. It is actually next Thursday. So that is the deadline to submit your request to amend your executed contract. So again, that's Thursday, February 29th, which is next Thursday. And so you don't have to have it finished by then. You just need to have the request into your project management specialist. And that request just needs to be in writing and just by email. And you can, I've had people submit attachments on letterhead, which you can do, or you can write it directly in the body of the email. Your requests are not guaranteed to be approved, and there is a approval process that they will go through. Once you send that request, your project management specialist will take that and it'll go up the chain until it's approved. And something to remember is that your funds are not going to automatically roll over. So if you aren't going to spend all your money this year, you can't assume that it's just, oh, we'll just use it next year. You do have to submit an amendment request because those funds will not roll over. So if you don't submit a request by next Thursday, unfortunately, you will lose the money that you do not spend by the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th of 2024. So when you make your request in writing by email, you will need to send in a few things to your project management specialist. You're going to let them know what your new expenses are and your justification. So if you're requesting something new, you're going to let them know what specifically it is and why do you need it. You're also going to let us know those exact numbers in your request, how much money needs to be moved, and you're going to let us know which fiscal year and which budget. And if you're feeling really enterprising and you want to, send in your new budget, if you have a really good handle on what that could look like, you're welcome to do that. Or you can just type that in your email request. So you're going to want to let us know which categories it's moving from. So say you're moving from professional fees to capital or capital to supplies. You're going to let us know which categories it's moving from. And on that note, you're going to let us know where the money is coming from for your new item or what you're changing. So you're going to let us know what the original budget line was, if it was supplies, and if that was in fiscal year 24, or say you are moving something from fiscal year 25, you want to get it, you think you can get it done sooner, let us know that it came from 25. And then if you are taking out something that you no longer need, please let us know the reasoning why you don't need it. And that'll help us determine if we need to redo your scope or if we're just doing a simple budget revision. So, pardon me. Some of the things that we've been getting as requests have been a lot of moving LPRs because unfortunately, people have started applying with TDOT, but they haven't gotten their approval yet, or it's taking a little longer to get that information together. And so they're needing to move those LPRs from 2024 to 2025. So that's a common one. Other people are moving vehicles and other expenses that they have put in orders for, or they just know from the vendor that they're not going to be able to get until next fiscal year. So they're moving those to fiscal year 25. And sometimes people are asking for more items, more radios, more body cams that you've already written into your scope, but you're just looking to order more. And people are also requesting amendments for things that are in excess of 20% of a budget line. So we have that 20% rule, and during the question section, you're welcome to ask questions about that, and we'll try to answer those. Things that are probably not going to be approved are generally unallowable expenses. You are probably not going to be approved if you're going to be moving small amounts of unspent money. Say you have like $100 left over. We're probably not going to be able to do a whole amendment just because you have a little bit of money left over. So try to make sure you spend that. And, I'm having agencies that have 30 cents or $11 left over, and that's fine. Like, that's to be expected. So don't worry about that. And also, if you're just asking for an extension due to the fact that unfortunately you just hadn't gotten around to working on your grant and it's not a justifiable delay. So unfortunately, we do need to know that you have been working on it over this past year, and that's why you're having trouble because of a vendor or because of some sort of a delay that is out of your control. And it's important to note here that formula and collaborative grants are not going to be the same in regards to amendments. The collaborative grants are unfortunately less flexible, and you won't be able to change things as easily with an amendment as the formula grants. So you'll just need to contact your project management specialist about that. And like Kate and I, and Aaron, we're doing a lot of the formula ones. And then Ben and Amy are doing a lot of the collaborative ones. So you should already know who your project management specialist is at this point, but if for some reason you do have any confusion, please just let us know. So that's kind of some of the basics, but I'm going to turn this over to Kate to look at some more detailed aspects of the amendment process. So Kate, take it away.
All right, so for the amendment process, once you have sent in that request that Jackie just explained to your PM, and once that your PM has has gathered all that information and has sent your request to, higher up in the chain, once it's approved, your PM will begin working on revisions of the budget and sometimes the scope. And it's very similar to the contracting process. So your PM will probably do majority of the work for you in those revisions. And this time frame is usually typically 3 to 4 days of back and forth with you and your PM. So it is recommended to be easily reachable by phone and email during this period. After the revisions are complete, the amendment will be finalized for internal review, and this typically takes about 2 to 3 days. We're typically very quick on getting the stuff moved along. And as a reminder, the items that are being added to a budget should not be purchased until after the effective date of the amendment. So if you have an amendment and your effective date is 4/1 or April 1st, those things cannot be purchased until then, unless if you're moving funds to fiscal year 25, then those funds cannot be spent until fiscal year 25 starts, which is July 1st, 2024.
I just want to add to this, waiting to purchase is regarding the actual expenditure of funds. So if you, Kate is absolutely right that you don't want to spend that money until your new amendment is effective, because that amendment will now have this new item that you're buying in the budget, whereas your prior budget did not. You can start the process of purchasing that equipment. You can issue your purchase order. You can start doing the legwork to get to that point. You just want to make sure that whatever vendor, whatever you're buying, you're not billed for it until you have your new until your new amendment is effective.
Right, so once that internal review is complete, the amendment will be sent to the authorized official, which is typically the mayor or the city manager, for signature. And then once that amendment is sent out for signature, you are given a deadline to return that signed amendment 2 weeks before the amendment effective date, which the effective dates are typically the 1st or the 15th of the month. And please note, if the amendment needs to go to an official city council or commission meeting prior to signature, from the authorized official, this may extend out the amendment effective date. So just let your PM know during communication if there is a meeting that it has to go to prior. And then once that amendment has been executed, a fully executed and final copy of the amendment will be sent to you. And also a new invoice workbook will be generated, which you will use to invoice the state. Please note it may take several weeks to be issued a new invoice workbook, so please be careful not to use the old workbook once the amendment is effective. And please wait to invoice for added expenses until you receive that new workbook. And then lastly, during this process, you should continue with your project during the amendment process using the current invoice workbook. And then as mentioned, once your amendment effective date has started, you will start using the new invoice workbook going from there.
I know there's a lot of kind of the same language in here. It's a little bit confusing. I think Kate did a good job laying it out. And what we're trying to communicate here is basically that you might be ready to invoice. You might have purchased your new item and not maybe received your invoice workbook yet, the new one. So that's just where you want to be careful. If you're ready to invoice, make sure you're invoicing using your new invoice workbook if it's after that effective date. And if you haven't received that yet, you can reach out to us and we can make sure you get it.
And Kimberly pointed out that the new workbook won't come from your PM. It'll come directly from the OBF office and that email.
Yeah, great point. I will say also that depending on when the amendment is executed, OBF kind of has these periods of high activity and then periods of less activity. OBF is usually very busy around the end of a quarter when they're processing tons and tons of invoices across hundreds of grant contracts. So just be aware that there might be some delay here, especially if you're executing an amendment around the end of March, April, something like that. Any questions on the amendment process or what goes into an amendment? Great job, Kate and Jackie. I did want to show folks an example of what we're talking about, and maybe that would be helpful here. So this is an email request. I kind of took out all I just excerpted the actual content of it. So, but rest assured, this is a real email that Jackie and I got from a project director. And so this particular agency has 2 grants, and they are talking about generally what they are expecting for the rest of the fiscal year. They're giving us reasons why certain budget lines will be underspent in pretty good detail. And then they're talking about what they want to do in replacement of the money that they're not going to spend, and why they need this and how they're justifying it with respect to their initiative to address violent crime. So this is kind of that initial email. You don't need to write this much, but we do need some justification for why you are not going to be spending money and why you need to spend money on something different that's not in your budget. So this is that kind of initial outreach. And then Jackie mentioned if you want to send a spreadsheet, here's an example of what that might look like. Sorry, let me just fit the screen a little bit better. So here is a copy of the budget that you submitted. This is what goes into your contract. So if you worked on the application side of this looks familiar to you. It's an Excel format. And so this particular person, we have here the summary page, and we have the detail page for fiscal year 24, and then summary and detail for fiscal year 25. They actually added a column here. Here's the original budget, and then here is what they want to change it to. So they are going to decrease these lines, and they highlighted that for us. They're going to decrease this line. They're going to totally eliminate this line. And then they're going to take some of that money and it's going to go here. And so here we can easily see what the new totals will be. They're ending up moving some money to fiscal year 25. And so these totals went up here. And right, we can do a little bit of math here with this, but this person really made it very, very simple, very easy for us. They kept working in the same exact spreadsheet that their budget's already in, which is really helpful. So here's an example of what you could do. And this will definitely expedite the process if it's kind of set up like this for us. Kimberly, Aaron, Amy, anything to add? And of course, Kate and Jackie as well. Anything to add?
I would just say, make your request simple but thorough. Those, seems like kind of an oxymoron, but, brief. You don't have to tell us, someone broke their leg. And so it's been, just keep us up to date, but easy to read if possible.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're people, right? We say this a lot. We're just people reading emails here, and we're also accessible by phone. And so while we do need some of this stuff in writing so that we can have a kind of chain of correspondence showing kind of the changes that were made to your contract, we can absolutely field these requests via phone call and then follow up with an email. We can talk through complicated requests with you. And so just know that, we're, while writing, the request has to eventually be in writing. This is not some formal thing that you can't talk to us about. And we understand that there's some nuances here with some of your projects. You may not know by February 29th exactly what your budget's going to look like for the rest of the year. We get that. What we want you to do is reach out to us and let us know what you do know at this point. And then we can work with you from there. Okay. Well, to close up, then I'm just going to remind some folks a little bit about invoicing. Many of you have invoiced already, and so we're really grateful that you've started to get to that point where you're able to invoice the state, and hopefully you've gotten your payments paid out. If you have a problem with that, please reach out to us and we can try to work with you and with OBF to make sure that you get paid. But part of that process is making sure that you invoice correctly. So we strongly recommend you invoice monthly for any expenses incurred in the prior month. At the very least, you should be submitting an invoice for any expenses that you've already incurred every quarter. And so we do set a deadline at the end of the quarter that you should invoice for all expenses in that quarter within 30 days. So the next due date for you to invoice is April 30th, and that would be for all expenses incurred from January 1st through March 31st. But again, you don't have to wait to invoice. You're welcome to invoice sooner, especially if you have overtime, salaries, any kinds of monthly fees. When you invoice, you submit that workbook, you fill out the this month's actual expenditures tab only. That should be the only, sorry, I said tab, I meant column. You should go to the tab of the month that you're filling out, and you should fill out only the this month's expenditures column. Do not touch any other part of your workbook. There are very intricate formulas that are put into that workbook by the Office of Business and Finance for you, and they calculate these totals automatically. So just be careful that you're only filling out the column that says this month's actual expenditures. So when you fill that out, you submit that to obf.grants@tn.gov. You will also submit a Word document which certifies basically where you want the payment to go. I'm sorry. So make sure that address is correct, and make sure the address on the workbook is correct. Make sure the workbook is signed as well. So it's just, you don't actually have to sign it. You just have to type your name and the date. But this should be filled out by either the financial director, project director, or the authorized official should be submitting this workbook. If you are an agency that has not invoiced yet and you haven't talked to your project management specialist about that yet, please reach out to them. We are doing our best to reach out proactively based on our list, but as our project management specialists can attest, we have huge caseloads, and it's just really hard for us to get to everybody in a timely manner. We're trying to prioritize agencies that have special needs. So if you haven't heard from us, but you haven't invoiced yet, please reach out to us. And then just to close up here, I want to remind folks that we have amazing trainings that are available for free for VCIF grantees. This has been updated since the last office hours. And so highly recommend you check out UT Law Enforcement Innovation Center. We have trainings, they have trainings on crime scene operations, field training officer trainings, and then criminal investigations. Almost every month, there's something going on. And then they also just added a brand new training on human trafficking. So the first training for that will be May 1st. It's in Denmark, Tennessee, hosted by the Madison County Sheriff's Office. Please contact Ashley Ferris for more information on this, or to let her know that you want to come. And Kate just dropped the link in the chat to the UT calendar of events. UT is also our technical assistance provider. So if you have questions about trainings, they are the experts in that. If you have funds for training and travel in your budget and you aren't sure how to spend that, or if this is the right training for you, or maybe you can get a trainer that's a little closer to home, reach out to UT and specifically to Rhiannon Jones, who's the program manager there. Her contact info is on this slide. And you can also use the QR code to get to their website. So please reach out to them. They are wonderful to work with, very approachable, And I happen to know that they have some capacity to work with folks right now. So if you have questions, please reach out to Rhiannon. We will be hosting the next office hours on March 27th from 10 to 11, and you'll get an email with contact information. I'm sorry, attendance information. Lastly, if you would please complete this survey. It's really helpful for us to get some feedback to know kind of is what we're doing helpful for you in these office hours? Are you able to get this information? Do you have ideas for how it could be better? It's a really quick survey. It takes about 3 minutes, and it can be found with this link or going to this QR code. And then when you go to that survey, you'll select VCIF office hours from the drop-down menu. So with that, I'm going to pause again for questions, and then I'll probably end the recording here in a little bit. But just want to see if anyone has questions about amendments or anything that we talked about today. You're welcome to come off of mute. You're welcome to put them in the chat.
Hi.
Hi.
I feel like I asked the same question as last month's office hours. I just want to make sure I understand completely that if we have held to the line item purchases that we have made, but for example, when we created our budget, we overestimated the cost, and we're coming in under budget. What relevance or pertinence does that have to amendment creation? Do I have to submit an amendment if we think we're going to be under budget?
If you think you're going to be under budget, how much money are you talking about here?
Well, I mean, the big one that pops out in my head is we're under 2 grants, but under the collaborative grant, we purchased a mobile command unit that came in $10,000 less. Roughly $10,000 less.
Okay.
And up until this point, I kind of assumed that we wouldn't have to submit an amendment for that, but after today, I'm thinking it sounds like we would, and I just want to make sure I understand.
So submitting an amendment is the whole kind of process culminates in an amendment. But if you just reach out and let us know, hey, we have this money left over, what can we do with it? That may not result in an amendment. We might be able to work with you to figure out how you can spend it, not lose it, but not have to go through the whole amendment process. So, so if you are underspending by any amount, I mean, I think Jackie was talking about like $11.03, right?
Yeah.
Maybe think twice about before sending us an email about that. Sure. But if you're underspending and you have thoughts about what you can do with that money, reach out to us.
Yeah, right before these office hours, I sent an email to Jay. This is the collaborative grant to Bartlett with Germantown, AJ, about additional expenses related to the purchase, which we think are within the scope of the grant, but they are, I don't know, like $700. But they're, they would help the things that we've purchased be more useful to us. And so they feel very much within the scope. And so I sent that to JJ, and he's probably just going to push it up to you, Ben. But beyond that, I mean, I could talk to my team, and we could see if we have other expenses. But it sounds like we want to come to you guys with ideas, or we would just tell you where we see the spending gap overall.
Yes. So there are tons of things that you can do with leftover funds, and we just want to help you do the things that work for your project and your agency without getting into trouble where the costs might be questioned by our finance department when we come monitor your contract. Yeah. So there are things that you could do with money that you wouldn't be allowed to do. And so when we say reach out to us, we just want to make sure you're not doing those things. Okay. And so in a lot of instances, it's buying something that wasn't in your contract. And so just that's why we just say reach out to us and let us know. And we've gotten, and my folks can attest to this, recently gotten a lot of requests from agencies with this very same issue, and we've been able to help them figure out things that they can do with the money without going through an amendment. So we can look at your budget, and it's usually 15, 20-minute phone call. We can kind of help you figure out, plan for spending down your grant without having to make significant changes.
Okay. But before February 29th, you would want kind of a clear sense where we think the spending gaps are.
That's right. Yeah, as best you can, just reach out to us by February 29th. And so we recognize that that's, in just around a week. So as much information as you can get by that time, this is really, this is the week where it's like, let's take a hard look at our budget. Let's take a hard look at the next 4 months. What is reasonable? What's doable?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That helped a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. And then, so we have some questions in the chat as well. And I'm going to keep the recording going because I think these are useful. Could you repeat what you said about sending in a Word document along with the invoice workbook? I missed what exactly that document is. Yeah, Holly, great question. So I'm going to try to pull up an email. And maybe if someone has this at hand really quickly, they can.
I got one, Ben.
Oh, you're amazing, Kimberly. Yes. Do you mind forwarding it to me in an email and I can just show folks? Or actually, I think you can share your screen. I think you have that ability. So you can go ahead and do that if you want. It's just a Word document that went out with your invoice workbook. When you got that invoice workbook that was sent to you after your contract was executed, this came from the Office of Business and Finance, probably came from someone with a state of Tennessee email address.
Come with the OBF email that when you originally, every time. So when you get your invoice workbook the first time from OBF, when your contract starts, they're going to also give you this sort of invoice certification where you verify the remit address and your organization name, and you just sign it and send that and attach it every time with your invoice workbook. That's it.
So when you got that invoice workbook email, it had 2 attachments. It had an Excel document, which was a workbook, and it had this document, a Word document.
It would have looked like this in the email.
That's what I'm looking for. Awesome.
It would have went to your project director, your financial director, and probably your authorized official and your program management specialist. So there's your workbook, there's your invoice certification document, and that kind of tells you what you need to do.
Okay, let's see what this next question is. If I invoice quarterly, do I only complete the spreadsheet for the quarter and month? Yes, that's a good question. I've seen both, honestly. I think it's probably easiest to just do the month that you're submitting, like the end of the quarter month that you're submitting, put all your quarter expenses in that month. That's going to ensure when OBF gets your workbook, they're going to look through the prior tabs. And it's because you're going to submit it in Excel format. You're not going to submit a PDF. Submit the Excel document, and it's going to have all those tabs that represent every month of the contract. And so they're going to look back through and make sure, because they're doing a quality check too. Sometimes they find discrepancies or broken links, broken formulas. Sometimes people do double bill twice for the same expense or something like that. So they're going to look. It's definitely just, if you just put it all in that month, that is an appropriate way to do it. Absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording here. It seems like we don't have any more questions in the chat, and I want to make this recording manageable. So thank you all for watching this and coming, and reach out if you have any questions. We're here.